She stood up, smirking, and said it loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's not my real mother." Carol's hand didn't shake. Her heart didn't race. She just slid the deed across the table right in front of her daughter and her future son-in-law. By the time they realized what it meant, it would be too late. The house, the legacy, and the years of sacrifice were no longer theirs to claim. Carol wasn't just the matriarch anymore. She was the woman who had stopped waiting for love to be earned. We're just getting started, but before we dive in, tell me, where are you listening from? These stories aren't just mine, they're mirrors. Drop your city in the comments, and if you believe in second chances, hit subscribe. She slid the menu across and said, "Mom's not paying for this wedding. She's not my real mother." Carol Green had picked the restaurant, not because it was elegant, though the exposed brick and low-hung Edison bulbs gave it an air of rustic charm, but because it was quiet. She needed clarity tonight, not showmanship. Lucas had pulled out Amanda's chair. That gesture, at least, Carol respected. He was polite, maybe too polite. Amanda, however, had walked in already talking about florists, about the band, about how her wedding needed that lakeside look, whatever that meant. Carol listened. She always had, even when it wasn't easy. She stirred her iced tea, folded her napkin, and waited until the appetizers arrived. "I thought tonight we'd talk numbers," she said gently, glancing between them. Realistically, Amanda blinked, as if caught off guard by her own mother trying to engage like an adult. "Right," she said. "Okay, so we're estimating about $78,000 total, venues taking most of it. Lucas's parents are covering rehearsal and photography, so it'd just be the venue and dress, and the basics." "The basics," Carol repeated. Her voice wasn't mocking, just quiet, heavy with a tired kind of wisdom. Amanda opened her purse, pulled out a folded sheet. "Here. I itemized it." She handed it over like it was a loan application. Lucas reached for his water, then paused. "Amanda, maybe we should. She deserves to see what it means." Amanda cut in. "This is her only daughter's wedding." Carol read through the numbers. The catering alone cost more than her first car. She looked up. "I can contribute," she said evenly, "but I won't be financing all of it. That wouldn't be fair to myself." Amanda didn't blink, didn't nod. She just stared at her for a beat too long. Then, like it had been rehearsed, she slid the menu aside with 2 fingers, turned to Lucas and said, too loudly, "Mom's not paying for this wedding. She's not my real mother." It hit like a burst pipe. No warning, just rupture. Lucas froze his glass lowered to the table with a soft clink. Carol didn't move. The world seemed to contract, the clatter of other tables dimming beneath the weight of that sentence. Her jaw didn't tighten, her eyes didn't water, but her heart, God, it shifted. Years of sleepovers and science fairs and scraped knees flickered behind her eyes. Every late night, every heartbreak mended. All of it, dismissed in a single sentence meant to wound. A waiter arrived and asked too cheerfully, "Are we ready to order?" Lucas answered for all of them. "Give us a minute." Carol folded the paper, set it down beside her fork. "If that's how you feel," she said quietly, "then I think we're done here." Amanda, still seated, looked shocked. Maybe she'd expected groveling, or an argument. Instead, her mother reached for her coat, nodded once to Lucas and walked out without touching her salmon. The house was dark when she returned. Outside, the wind tossed leaves across the porch, but inside, everything was still, the kind of still that stretches out after a deep hurt, not silence, but withdrawal. Her cell phone lay on the charger, untouched. No missed calls, no messages, just a blinking cursor on a black screen. Carol sat down slowly on the edge of the couch, coat still on, one glove forgotten on the floor. She'd heard Amanda say cruel things before, the tantrums at 13, the slights in her 20s, but never this, never something so precise, so calculated. She glanced toward the hallway where the soft keypad light glowed above the safe. She rose, walked over and entered the code. Click. Inside, the house deed sat beside old photos and birth certificates, documents that held meaning, even when people forgot to. She reached for it. Her fingers, weathered from years of work, brushed the paper. She didn't cry. Instead, she whispered something only the dark heard. No more waiting to be chosen. Before the sun broke the horizon, Carol stood barefoot in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. "Tom," she said to her attorney, her voice steady, low. "I want to change the deed." She never needed its value until she learned who didn't love her for it. Tom still kept the same office clock from decades ago, a square plastic relic that ticked too loudly. Carol could hear it as soon as she walked in, even over the soft murmur of the receptionist's keyboard. It ticked like it knew time was up. Tom met her in the hallway, his gray tie askew like always. "You're early." Carol nodded. "Didn't sleep much." She didn't need to explain why. Tom knew Amanda, knew the family well enough to avoid small talk this morning. He just led her into the conference room, closed the door and turned the overhead light down a notch. The folder was already on the table. "You brought the original deed?" he asked, tapping the folder without opening it. Carol sat slowly, smoothing the lapel of her navy cardigan like armor. "I did." He flipped through the pages, his brows furrowing. "You left it all to Amanda. No trust structure, no contingencies, just straight inheritance." "I thought I was doing the right thing," she said. "I thought—" She stopped herself. She was different then. Tom didn't interrupt. He'd seen this before. Mothers rewriting the boundaries of love after love went unrewarded. "I want it changed," Carl said, effective immediately. "Remove Amanda. Set it aside for Amelia and any future grandchildren." Tom blinked once, then nodded. "We can do that. But it'll take some fees to restructure and file. And we need to list someone as interim trustee until Amelia turns 18, 17 next spring," Carl said, "but I'll stay trustee until then." She signed without hesitation. Tom clicked his pen. "I'll have the documents ready for you by this afternoon. You'll need to come back to notarize." Carl exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. On her way out, she stopped at Rita's little antique shop 2 blocks away, the one that always smelled like cedar and orange peel. Rita was at the front counter, stacking linen-wrapped candles into a basket. She looked up and grinned, but that grin faded when she saw Carl's face. "Come sit," she said, motioning to the velvet love seat near the window. Carl didn't speak at first. She just sat, pulled off her gloves and laid her hands in her lap like she was praying. "It's done," she finally said. Rita tilted her head. "You followed through?" "I took her off the deed. Changed the beneficiary. Amelia's name will be there next." Rita didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward and covered Carl's hands with her own. "That house wasn't built for a wedding," she said. "It was built from patience and nights spent teaching her to read, and porches held up by your spine. Don't let anyone tell you it belonged to someone else." Carl's throat tightened. "I don't want revenge." "I know," Rita said. "You want peace." They sat there a moment, letting that truth rest between them. Carl's phone buzzed in her coat pocket. "Amanda." A text. "When can we expect the funding? Deposits are due." No greeting, no apology, just expectation. Transaction. Carl stared at the screen, thumb hovering. She typed, "Hi Amanda. I won't be funding the wedding," then deleted it. Too direct. She typed again, "Hi. I've made other plans for the estate. We can talk when you're ready," and sent it. The screen dimmed before Amanda replied. She didn't. That afternoon, Carl returned to Tom's office. She signed and initialed each page, not pausing once. "This is going to rattle her," Tom said gently, handing her the final copy. Carl tucked the file into her handbag. If a daughter unbuilds a home with one sentence, she should be ready to hear the ones that come after. He didn't argue. Outside, the wind had picked up again. Yellow leaves scraped across the sidewalk like they were trying to be remembered. Carl watched them for a moment, before heading back to her car. Rita called that evening. "You all right?" "I feel." Carl searched for the word. "Clean." There was silence on the line. Then Rita said softly, "Now you born from dignity, not duty." Carl smiled. "That's what I was trying to find all along." The next morning, Tom left her a voicemail. "Hey Carl. Just confirming the deed change has gone through. Amanda has no legal claim moving forward. Carl replayed it twice. Then she placed her phone on the kitchen counter. Just as Amanda's name lit up the screen, she called that evening, voice shaky, polite, "We need to talk." The call came just before dusk, while Carl was pruning back the lavender bushes behind the kitchen window. The phone buzzed once in her apron pocket. "Amanda." Carl let it ring twice before answering, steady breath in, then out. "Hi," she said simply. Amanda's voice was too composed, too rehearsed, but the cracks weren't hard to find if you knew her. If you'd raised her. "Hale, I was hoping we could talk." Carl walked to the edge of the porch, eyes grazing the distant hills where golden light settled like dust. "Is this about the wedding?" she asked. A pause. "Sort of. Everything's a lot." And Lucas thought, maybe I want to clear the air. Carl heard the unspoken panic under her daughter's politeness. She didn't press it. "I'll be at the rehearsal dinner," she said calmly. "We can talk after that. If it still feels necessary." There was another pause. Longer this time. "Okay," Amanda said. "Dinner's in 2 weeks. Send the address." Click. Carl stood there a moment, staring at the empty sky. Not angry, not triumphant, just full of quiet ache. 3 days later, Amanda showed up unannounced at the ranch. The gravel crackled under her tires as she pulled up in a rented sedan, sleek and black against the faded white fencing and sun-worn porch. She stepped out slowly, as if stepping onto uncertain ground. Carl met her at the gate. "You drove all the way out here?" she asked mildly, arms crossed not unkindly. Amanda shrugged, not meeting her eyes, just needed to see it. "The house. You," she said. Carl didn't smile, but she didn't turn her away either. Inside, the air smelled faintly of rosemary and old books. Rita was sitting in her usual armchair by the fireplace, a half-finished quilt draped across her lap, hands moving in quiet rhythm. Amanda stopped just inside the doorway like a guest in someone else's life. Carl disappeared into the kitchen, and returned with 2 glasses of lemonade, condensation trickling down the sides. She handed one to Amanda, who took it but didn't drink, just stood there awkwardly, eyes darting to the framed photos lining the hallway walls, birthdays, graduations, Amelia holding a sparkler at 4th of July. Carl gestured toward the porch. "You can sit." Amanda hesitated. "It's changed in here." Carl nodded. "So have I." They sat across from each other, the silence between them stretching like tight thread. Amanda ran her thumb along the sweating glass. "You were always so calm. It used to drive me crazy." Carl chuckled softly. "It still does apparently." Amanda flinched, whether from guilt or truth. Carl couldn't tell. "I thought saying what I said at the restaurant would make you react," Amanda admitted. "I wanted to shake something loose. Instead, you disappeared." "I didn't disappear," Carl said gently. "You just stopped seeing me." Inside, Rita's sewing needle continued its soft rhythm, a hush-hush whisper of thread on fabric. The sound filled the gaps in their conversation better than words could. Carl studied Amanda, not her posture or her makeup, but her eyes. They looked exhausted, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of keeping up the performance. "I didn't come here for money," Amanda added quickly. "I know that's what it looks like." Carl didn't reply. She didn't need to. The silence had teeth now, sharp and holy. Amanda stood abruptly, set her lemonade on the porch rail, and smoothed down her dress. "Anyway, I just wanted to show up, like you always did." Carl tilted her head. "One visit doesn't undo what's been done." Amanda's shoulders sagged. "I know." She walked back toward the car, gravel crunching like tiny verdicts beneath her heels. Carl stayed on the porch, her hand resting lightly on the empty glass. Inside, Rita finally looked up from her stitching. "That girl's still spinning." "She'll keep spinning," Carl replied, "until she figures out she was never the axis." That night just before bed, Carl's phone lit up. A text. "Amanda, dinner is in 2 weeks. I'll talk this time." Carl stared at it, unreadable, then powered the phone off. She stood on stage and said, "Everything will be perfect if she just stays quiet." The rehearsal dinner venue was the kind of place that smelled faintly of eucalyptus, and expensive expectation. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead, and the catering staff floated like ghosts in black and white. Carl walked in without fanfare. Rita followed a step behind, wearing a deep green blouse and a neutral face. She leaned close and whispered, "This isn't a dinner, it's theater." Carl nodded once. "Then I won't act." The room was already buzzing. Amanda stood near a podium at the front of the hall, her dress sleek, modern, unforgiving. She glanced up just as Carl entered, and smiled like nothing was wrong, but her shoulders said otherwise, stiff, squared, defensive. Lucas greeted them first. He looked tired, like someone who had learned how to hold his breath for days at a time. "Glad you came," he said softly. Carl touched his arm. "Of course." The seating chart placed her off to the far right, half a table away from the wedding party. On purpose. Carl didn't mind. She folded her hands in her lap, and watched Amanda flutter from table to table, laughing too loudly, correcting flower arrangements, giving the photographer side glances. She wasn't hosting, she was managing. When Amanda finally took the mic, the chatter dimmed. "Hi everyone," she began, voice bright but brittle. "Thank you all for being here. Lucas and I are just so grateful. This weekend is really about family, community and doing things the right way." She emphasized that last phrase like it was aimed at someone in particular. "As you all know, we're handling the wedding independently. No help, no handouts. It means more that way." She laughed lightly. "Keeps it simple." Some guests clapped. Others didn't know if they were supposed to. Carl felt her heart beat harder, but slower, like a quiet knock from within. Rita leaned in, barely audible. "Just hold. Don't hurt." But Carl was already right. She moved toward the front like the floor itself made space for her. Amanda paused mid-sentence. Everyone turned. Carl stepped onto the stage. No microphone. Just her voice. Clear. Grounded. "I've stayed silent for a long time," she began, thinking dignity meant disappearing when uninvited. A hush spread across the room. "I've heard things said about me," some whispered. Some declared like truth. "I didn't correct them, because I thought it would protect what little thread we had left." She pulled a folded document from her purse, and laid it gently on the podium. "But truth doesn't need permission." Amanda's face paled. Lucas stood, uncertain whether to intervene. Carl continued, voice never rising. "This house, this legacy I built, it no longer belongs to my daughter. It belongs to the community that raised her, to the children who will need a place to read, to rest, to be reminded they're worthy even when no one funds their dream." Rita from the back blinked hard. A tear slid free. Carl tapped the deed once. "As of last week, I've donated my estate to a trust that supports education, wellness and future generations. My granddaughter will be its steward one day." A few gasps. Some murmur. Amanda's hands trembled slightly at her sides. Carl looked directly at her, not with vengeance, but with release. "This isn't punishment," she said softly. "It's a rebalancing." Then she stepped down. No applause, just silence. She walked past tables lined with guests frozen in confusion. Lucas looked at her like he'd seen someone resurrected. Rita caught her hand briefly as she passed, grounding her. Carl didn't turn back, not even once. As she pushed open the grand doors and stepped into the cool night air, a single sound followed her, sharp, audible. Amanda gasping behind her. Not a sob, not a word, just air, leaving the body when you realize something you thought you owned has already let go. She thought everything revolved around her wedding. "I built it for dozens. She'll never know." The scent of pine oil and fresh paint lingered in the air. As Carl opened the front doors of the ranch house wide, sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors, lighting up the space like it had waited years to be seen properly. Not as a keepsake, not as a financial anchor, but as something alive. Rita handed her a clipboard with a note clipped to the top, called Mia. "She's in. Let's build this thing." Over the next week, the house transformed. Carol cleared out the guest rooms, stripped the old bedding, opened windows sealed shut for years. Rita painted trim while Mia cataloged a shelf of donated books, alphabetically, muttering, "If people can't find Mary Oliver, they'll leave." They hung flyers at the farmer's market, the post office, the school. Women stopped by with folding chairs and hand-sewn banners, A retired yoga teacher named Elaine offered to teach breathing classes on Tuesdays. A man who had lost his wife last fall donated wildflower seeds and offered to mow the trails in her memory. Carol watched it unfold, not with a sense of control, but with awe, like someone watching wind move tall grass, knowing they didn't create it but were lucky enough to witness it. That night she fell asleep without the weight. No spinning ceiling, no clenched fists under the covers, just silence, honest silence. 2 days later, while she was in the garden thinning herbs for the welcome table, she heard a car engine she didn't recognize. A dark sedan, not Amanda's. Lucas stepped out, tie loose, sleeves rolled up, like he'd driven straight from a boardroom and hadn't stopped thinking since. Carol wiped her hands on her apron, saying nothing as he approached the porch. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago, like some truth had been carved into him. "I didn't come for her," he said quietly. Carol waited. "I came because I needed to know why it felt right." His voice cracked slightly. "What you did, that night." Carol folded her arms. "You didn't defend her." "I didn't know how," he admitted, "and that shamed me." They stood there, the air thick with unasked questions. Lucas looked toward the retreat center sign. Mia had hammered into the front lawn. "I want space. Away from the noise. Just for a while." Carol studied him. "You'll find it here, but it won't be comfortable." "I'm not asking for comfort," he said. "Just clarity." He glanced toward the driveway, where dust still lingered. "I haven't told her I'm here yet," he added. Carol didn't blink. "Then don't waste your quiet," she said, and turned to open the door. He walked into a gala vibe and whispered, "I don't know where I belong anymore." By the time Lucas stepped inside, the living room had taken on an energy he hadn't expected. Laughter filtered in from the back porch, where Rita was walking 2 young women through retreat sign-up sheets and decorative table settings. In the dining room, Mia was laying out paper lanterns and neatly folded name cards. A local baker had dropped off cinnamon mini loaves for the next day's kickoff brunch. It didn't feel like a house anymore. It felt like something sacred. Lucas stood just inside the front door, clutching a small bottle of wine he hadn't realized was a mistake, until the moment it hit the light. He glanced around like he was looking for a sign of how to act. Carol emerged from the hallway in jeans and a soft linen shirt, her hair pulled back. "No jewelry, no performance. You brought wine," she said, one brow lifting slightly. "We don't serve alcohol at the retreat." Lucas's face flushed. "Right. Sorry." He turned to set it on the entryway bench. I wasn't sure what I was walking into." Carol gestured for him to follow her. "That makes 2 of us." Out on the porch, Rita waved and excused herself to the kitchen. Mia nodded toward Lucas with polite curiosity, then turned back to her checklist. Lucas exhaled slowly. "This place feels like a gala." Carol gave him a half smile, more like a barn dance hosted by introverts. He looked around, hands in his pocket. "I don't know where I belong anymore." Carol sat on the porch swing and motioned for him to take the nearby rocker. "Then start by being where you are." He eased into the seat, elbows on his knees. "I've talked to Rita and Mia. Didn't mean to pry, but they were open. Gracious." Carol said nothing, letting him unfold on his own. "They told me what you're building here," Lucas went on. "What it's already doing for people. The writing workshops, the widows' meetups, the nightlight walks." He glanced. "It's hard to explain, but it felt like walking into something I wanted to protect." Carol turned to him then, face unreadable. "You said nothing the night she dismissed me." "I know," he said quickly, "and I've been carrying that. You didn't cause, but I didn't stop it." There was no defense in his tone, no justification, just the echo of someone who'd had time to sit with failure. "She's always been full of volume," he said quietly, "and I thought if I stood still long enough she'd soften. That was naive." Carol tilted her head. "What do you want from me, Lucas?" "I don't want anything," he said, "except to say I'm sorry. On her behalf. On mine. You deserved better in that room. From both of us." Carol's fingers grazed the edge of the swing's cushion. She weaponized truth to feel powerful. That's not the same as honesty. Lucas nodded. I know that now. A long breath passed between them. Do you need somewhere to stay? Carol asked. I booked a motel in town. Didn't want to assume. She considered that. You didn't assume. You asked. He sat back, visibly relieved. I can help if you need hands, for the launch or whatever else. Carol looked toward the retreat center's garden path, where solar lights were beginning to blink on in the early dusk. This place was never about inheritance. It's about contribution. If that's what you're offering, then yes, help. Lucas nodded. It is. She turned back toward him. You did the bravest thing today, Lucas. He looked puzzled. Coming here. Carol shook her head, reaching out without asking to be forgiven. He swallowed hard, emotion crawling up his throat. Thank you. She stood, brushing off her jeans. Come help me move the tables inside. The wind's picking up. As they walked inside, a sudden buzz lit up Carol's phone on the windowsill. She paused, picked it up, and read the message silently. Her face changed, but not with fear, with readiness. She turned the phone screen toward Lucas. Amanda, I'm coming tonight, alone. Carol didn't say a word. She just unlocked the front door again. She came back in tears and said, I missed home. It was nearly 9 p.m. when the knock came. Not a confident, hard rap, just 3 soft taps, barely above the sound of the wind brushing through the porch screen. Carol looked up from folding tea towels in the kitchen, and didn't need to check the door. She knew. Lucas was rinsing dishes, his sleeves still rolled. He looked toward her. Do you want me to? No. Carol said, already drying her hands. This one's mine. She opened the door slowly. Amanda stood there, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Eyes rimmed red, mascara faintly smudged, like a story she'd tried to erase halfway. She wore flats instead of heels, no earrings, no coat, despite the chill. Carol didn't speak, just opened the door wider. Amanda stepped in, but only a little. Her gaze moved quickly over the room, the soft lighting, the herbs drying over the sink, the warm scent of rosemary and lemon still clinging to the air. Home. I didn't know if I should come, she said, her voice cracking. But I missed this. I missed you. Carol's face stayed still, kind but unreadable. It's late. Sit down. Amanda followed her onto the porch, the same swing she'd once sneered at as too rustic. Now she settled into it gently, like it might break under her guilt. The stars were faint overhead, the moon thin and sharp. Crickets filled the silence. I said terrible things, Amanda whispered. Things I thought would make you feel small, because I felt so small. Carol waited, not cold, just angry. Amanda continued. And the truth is, I didn't even mean it. I just wanted to hurt something that wouldn't leave me, like you never did. Carol let the swing creak once before replying. That line didn't come from you. Amanda turned. What? You may have said it. Carol said, voice low and measured. But you didn't write it. That came from somewhere, or someone else, and you let it out your mouth without thinking what it cost. Amanda looked down. It was something Lucas said once, about my real mom, and I twisted it, because I thought if I said it loud enough, you'd back down, or beg, or something. Carol didn't flinch. And did it work? Amanda shook her head, tears catching light on her lashes. You didn't even raise your voice. I didn't need to. Carol said, I raised you. The swing moved again, a gentle rhythm like breath. I never asked you why you said no. Amanda murmured. About the wedding. I just assumed it meant you didn't care. Carol leaned back, eyes fixed on the horizon. It wasn't about money, not really. It was about the way it was asked. With expectation, not invitation. With a list, not a conversation. Amanda closed her eyes. You were right. I didn't want a partner. I wanted a sponsor. Carol looked at her for a long time. You've always been good at performance, but you've never once asked what applause costs the people clapping for you. Amanda's breath hitched. I didn't realize what I was taking until you stopped giving. They sat there, silence holding space between them like arms too tired to argue. After a few minutes, Amanda looked sideways and gave a soft, tearful laugh. This porch always made me feel safe. I just forgot that part. You didn't forget. Carol said gently. You ignored it. That's different. Amanda nodded. wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. I understand now, really. Carol reached over and laid a hand on her daughter's knee. Understanding doesn't fix things, but it opens the door. Amanda covered her hand with hers, and for once there was no control, no transaction, just contact. Behind them, the screen door creaked open. Rita leaned out, a spatula in one hand, and her apron dusted with powdered sugar. "Dinner's up," she called. "And someone made cupcakes. In your honor, apparently." Amanda blinked, startled. "Cupcakes?" Rita smiled knowingly. Carol stood, motioned toward the house. "Come in," she said, "before the frosting melts." She returned to her seat, this time not as a claimant, but as a guest. The dining room had been transformed, not extravagantly, but intentionally. Hand-folded name cards rested in front of chipped heirloom china. Fresh daisies floated in mason jars down the center of the long table, and a twine-strung banner across the far wall read, "Welcome to the greenhouse." Carol stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, a slight blush in her cheeks from the kitchen heat. She wasn't the host in the conventional sense. She was the spine of it all, the reason the room held warmth and weight at once. Amanda sat quietly beside her, not at the center, not announced, just present. For once she hadn't chosen the seat, and she didn't mind. Rita passed a bowl of roasted vegetables to Mia, who was already deep in conversation with Elaine, the yoga teacher. Laughter drifted in gently. Conversations overlapped like quilt patches, small, deliberate, and stitched with comfort. Amanda said little, but she listened, really listened. When guests spoke of Carol, they didn't use lofty words, they used true ones. "She made us feel like this house was waiting for us the whole time," one woman said softly, touching her tea glass. "She didn't ask what we needed, she just gave it," someone else added. "That porch swing saved me after my divorce." Amanda's eyes lowered with each comment. Ashamed, yes, but also awed. There was a whole world built from her mother's silence, and she'd missed it because she'd only ever measured value in volume. Lucas stood up halfway through the meal, his wine glass filled with sparkling cider. He cleared his throat. "I've been quiet lately," he began, "but sometimes quiet is where the truest words start." The table hushed. Even the laughter dimmed. He turned toward Carol. "This house, it's more than a structure. It's a gathering place for people who didn't know they needed each other, and none would exist without Carol." He glanced briefly at Amanda, then back to the group. "So tonight," he continued, raising his glass, "I want to toast the woman who built more than a home. She built a haven. To my mom." Carol didn't tear up, but her breath caught, just for a second. There was applause, not explosive, but full, kind, a sound without obligation. Amanda clapped too. Her fingers trembled as they touched, then fell still in her lap. Later, after the table had been cleared and only candlelight flickered against the walls, Carol reached into a drawer and pulled out a slim leather-bound book. She placed it gently in front of Amanda. Amanda touched the cover with cautious fingers. It read, "Love Without Conditions," a memoir by Carol Green. She blinked fast. "Is this?" Carol gave a small nod. "It's not for publishing. It's for remembering. I started writing it after Amelia was born. I finished it the night after the dinner." Amanda didn't open it, not yet. She cradled it like something fragile, something with weight that needed to be earned. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "You don't have to," Carol said. "It's not about deserving, it's about returning." Amanda's breath hitched. She held the book close to her chest. Lucas came up beside her, one hand on her back. "Read it slow," he murmured. "I did." Carol began blowing out candles one by one. As the room dimmed, the only sound left was the low hum of belonging. Amanda lingered near the fireplace, holding the memoir like a second chance she wasn't ready to put down. The next morning, Carol found a sealed envelope slid under her door. Inside, a note from Mia. "Board meeting at 10 a.m. sharp. Trust leadership has news. Bring Amanda." Carol folded it twice, slipped it into her back pocket, and turned to see Amanda already in the kitchen making coffee. They voted unanimously. The deed sticks and the programs begin. The main hall of the greenhouse was quieter than the night before. No clinking silverware or layered laughter, just the low murmur of voices over coffee, and copies of the agenda. The long pine table had been cleared of decor, replaced with binders, pens and nameplates, but sunlight still poured through the east windows, and the faint scent of roasted beans drifted from the kitchen, where Amanda had insisted on making the morning pot. Carol stepped in from the porch, wearing a denim jacket over her usual earth-toned sweat. Mia waved her over, then tapped the microphone. "Morning, everyone. Let's get started." Chairs scraped gently. Amanda took the seat next to Carol this time, placing her hand on the leather-bound folder in front of her without opening it. The shift in her posture was subtle, but Carol caught it, less guarded, more grounded. She didn't look like someone attending out of obligation. She looked like someone ready. Mia cleared her throat, scanning a printout. "Before we jump into logistics, I want to read something that came in last night." She unfolded a stack of letters, all handwritten. "This one's from Mary Ellen in town," she began. "The greenhouse helped me stop feeling like an afterthought in my own life. Please keep the doors open for women like me." The room fell still. Another letter. "I'm 17. I came to a writing session with my mom. She said it was the first time she saw me smile and weep." Mia read 3 more, each one different in voice, but braided with the same thread: belonging, redemption, quiet rescue. Carol glanced sideways. Amanda had gone very still, eyes wide, breath shallow, not in resistance, but in recognition. Then, with no preamble, Mia lifted a blue folder and said, "The trust board has reached a decision." The room collectively straightened. "The deed is officially and permanently vested in the Greenhouse Foundation. Programming approval is unanimous. We launch next quarter." There was a beat of silence, then soft applause, chair legs scuffing back as people stood. Relief and joy stirred the air, quiet and reverent. Amanda didn't clap. She stood slowly and turned to Carol. "I want to help," she said, her voice low but firm. "Not just watch. I want in." Carol looked at her, really looked before answering. "We'll need someone in admin, budgeting, scheduling, logistics." "I can do logistics. I can do logistics," Amanda said, already grabbing a notepad. "I'll shadow Mia for the first week. Then, we'll see." Carol blinked, not because she was surprised Amanda could do it, but because she hadn't expected her to want to. Across the room, Lucas was helping move chairs for the volunteer orientation. He cracked a joke with someone from the kitchen staff, then ducked his head to whisper to Carol as he passed, "She's growing up in front of all of us." Carol didn't respond right away. Her eyes were on her daughter, who was now leaning over Mia's folder, jotting down names and tasks with quiet intensity. It didn't feel like a miracle. It felt like something earned back, one brick at a time. Boundaries, Carol realized, not walls but framework. The distance had made the closeness mean something again. By noon, the board meeting had shifted into breakout groups. Amanda had migrated easily between stations, checking the volunteer sign-up sheet, flagging errors on a spreadsheet, making a call to the catering company about dietary options for the upcoming retreat. When one of the retreat coordinators asked for help covering a weekend session on storytelling and personal narrative, Amanda didn't hesitate. "I'll teach it," she said, glancing once toward her mother. "I've got ideas already." Carol didn't say anything, but her smile was deep, and her shoulders settled in a way that said, "This is what peace looks like." As the final hour of the meeting ticked down, Mia tapped her mic one last time. "There's one more item," she said, her tone shifting. "A proposal from the board, approved this morning." She pulled out a small manila envelope and handed it to Amanda. "A scholarship fund," Mia said, "for young women entering social work, storytelling or restorative justice fields, named in your honor." Amanda looked up sharply. "Why me?" "Because," Mia said simply, "what you're doing right now, that's a legacy." The room murmured with quiet agreement, no big applause this time, just silence and awe. Amanda opened the envelope. Inside, forms, title documents, and a cover page. The Amanda Green Legacy Scholarship Fund, for those who fall, and then rise. She stared at it for a moment too long. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Lucas stepped beside her again, gently setting a hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" Amanda nodded, then shook her head, then nodded again, blinking fast as she pressed the folder to her chest. Tears didn't fall yet, that her throat tightened as her eyes scanned the first page, where her name was etched into permanence. The final line caught her breath. Initial funding, $75,000. Donated anonymously. Amanda looked up, mouth parting in shock. She had no idea, and that's when the real questions began. She organized the kickoff weekend, and I didn't expect to hear her say, "Mom, this is beautiful." They arrived in dusty Subarus and shared rides, women of all stripes carrying more baggage in their eyes than in their hands. The retreat officially began at 8 a.m., but Carol had been up since 5, lighting sage bundles, setting out name tags, warming muffins in the old oven that still ran hotter on the left side. Amanda was already outside, clipboard in hand, adjusting the welcome sign she'd staked at the gate. The wind kept flipping it sideways. "Stubborn thing," she muttered, wrangling it into place. Carol watched her through the screen door, how she moved with purpose, not performative grace. There was dirt on Amanda's jeans. She hadn't noticed. That was new. By 9 a.m., the front porch had become a shoeless sanctuary. Journals balanced on knees. Pens hovered. The morning session had begun. Carol stood barefoot on the top step, her voice carrying just enough to be heard over the crickets. "Don't write what's expected," she said. "Write what aches." There were no nods, no verbal affirmations, just the quiet scratching of 30 pens across lined paper. Amanda sat near the back, arms folded, not in skepticism but in restraint. She was watching the way people changed when they felt safe. Her mother wasn't directing, she was holding. After the session, Carol collected the pages into a woven basket and set them aside for afternoon sharing. Amanda helped clear mugs from the porch, brushing crumbs off a bench as she went. "You okay?" Carol asked casually. Amanda nodded, then paused. "Mom, this is beautiful." Carol turned away quickly. Not out of coldness, but because she knew if she looked too long, she'd break the spell. "Some words you didn't trap under glass." Lunch was simple. Chickpea salad, local bread, fruit laid out in wooden bowls. Amanda served seconds without being asked, laughing when a woman joked that she'd come just for the lemonade. Lucas, stationed under the oak tree with a flip chart, was walking 5 women through budgeting for rebirth, a workshop he'd insisted on titling himself. "Let's be real," he said, flipping the chart. "Divorce costs money. Healing costs more. Let's not pretend self-reinvention is free." There was laughter, real and round. One woman snapped her fingers in agreement. Amanda passed by with a tray of clean glasses and shot him a look. He grinned. "They like me." She rolled her eyes but didn't hide her smirk. By evening, everyone had reconvened in the barn loft strung with soft lights. The air smelled of hay, candles and lavender oil someone had spilled near the stairwell. One by one, the women read their morning pages aloud. There were stories of loss, of rage, of love tangled in silence. In each, whether intentional or not, was a small echo of Carol. Her cadence, her clarity, her stubborn refusal to look away from pain. Amanda leaned forward, listening, not scanning, not organizing, just listening. Later, after the applause had softened into hums and hugs, she found Carol by the back steps, wine glass in hand. "I don't think I can stay here forever," Amanda said quietly. "But I want to build something like this, wherever I end up." Carol didn't answer right away. She looked out at the stars, unfussy, steady. "You don't have to stay," she said at last. "But you're always part of it." The last night of the retreat ended in the dining room again, but this time with people in slippers, wrapped in shawls, wine in mismatched glasses. Carol stood and tapped her spoon against her mug. "I was going to toast to healing," she said, smiling, "but I've changed my mind." The room hushed. "To second chances," she said, raising her glass, "and grown daughters." The clinking was soft but firm. Amanda lifted her glass without hesitation this time. When the table began to break into conversations and yawns, Amanda slid into the seat beside her mother. Her voice was low, almost casual. "Can guests stay the weekend?" Carol blinked. "Why?" Amanda didn't answer right away. The front door creaked. And then voices. Too familiar, too close. Carol From the hallway came the unmistakable sound of her sister's voice, sharp, laughing, entitled. Amanda's smile fell, And just like that, the peace trembled. They invited their wealthy friend crowd and insulted my independence. The air shifted before they even walked in. Carol could feel it, an invisible tension, like the temperature had dropped without warning. Perfumed laughter floated through the entryway, too loud for the hour. Amanda's college friends weren't early risers. They'd flown in on red-eye jets, and somehow arrived overdressed for a weekend, meant to be barefaced and barefoot. Carol barely had time to wipe her hands on a dish towel before the front door flung open wide. Amelia, the first to arrive, swept in wearing wide-leg white linen pants and a cashmere wrap, flanked by two others, whose sunglasses remained on despite the overcast sky. "Where are the private suites?" one of them asked, scanning the open floor plan like it was a real estate "This is the place Amanda's always going on about." Carol smiled. "Tight. Welcome to the greenhouse. We keep things simple here." They didn't bother to hide the glance they exchanged. Amanda followed a moment later, trailing behind them, her expression unreadable. Carol waited until their guests were briefly occupied, snapping selfies in front of the barn mural to approach her daughter. "You didn't tell me they were coming. I didn't know until last night," Amanda said quickly, eyes flicking away. "They were in Denver for a tech thing, and decided to swing by." "For the weekend?" Amanda hesitated. "Just a night, probably. They want to see where I've been hiding." Carol didn't respond. She didn't need to. The living room now held the sound of champagne bottles popping, someone complaining about the draft, and another asking if there was a Peloton in the main house, or the guest one. At lunch, they refused the chickpea salad. Amelia wrinkled her nose. "Do you have actual, like grilled salmon or something? I haven't eaten carbs since Tuesday." Amanda stood frozen at the end of the buffet line, torn between placating and preserving. "We're not a resort," Carol said simply. "We serve what we share." They all laughed like she'd made a joke. In the afternoon, the retreaters returned from a forest walk to find the yoga deck taken over. One of Amanda's friends had laid out her own mat, playing EDM from a Bluetooth speaker and live streaming her wilderness flow. "I thought this place was supposed to be grounding," she said, tapping her screen with manicured fingers. Carol stood at the edge of the deck, jaw tight. She didn't raise her voice, didn't shame or scold. She just turned and walked back to the kitchen. Amanda followed, guilt dragging behind her like a broken sandal. "They're intense," she offered lightly. Carol turned, soft but firm. "Amanda, you have to choose who you build for, not who builds for you." Amanda froze. The words landed like they had 1,000 pounds behind them. Truth without accusation. Pain without anger. "I was so lost," Amanda whispered, voice cracking. "I would have sold a home for theirs." Carol stepped forward, hands gentle on her daughter's shoulders. "I never sold anything," she said, "but I gave away everything worth more." Amanda collapsed into her mother's arms, then barely making a sound, except for one shuddered breath. They stood like that for a long while in the stillness of the kitchen, the old refrigerator humming like it had been holding its breath too. When Amanda finally pulled back, her face was different. Not clearer, not calmer, just more real. She stepped away without a word. By dusk the guests were back inside, tipsy and half-interested in the community dinner, offering unsolicited advice on monetizing the vibe. Amanda was nowhere to be found. Carol searched the barn loft, the back porch, the garden. Nothing. At midnight Lucas stepped into the kitchen, brow furrowed. "She left." Carol shook her head. "I don't think so. Her coat still on the hook." Then she saw a folded piece of lined notebook paper, slid under the back door. Carol picked it up with trembling fingers. The handwriting was rushed but unmistakable. "Meeting at dawn." No location, no signature, but Carol didn't need one. She shows up shaking and says, "I know where my home is now." The sky was still more shadow than light when Carol stepped onto the porch. Mist clung low, over the meadow like breath that hadn't yet settled. The crickets had quieted, but the birds weren't up yet. That in-between silence, soft holding, expectant. She wore her old wool sweater and carried 2 mugs, both steaming, one black, one with a splash of oat milk. The way Amanda liked it, when she admitted to liking anything simple. The dew soaked her slippers as she made her way to the split log bench beneath the oak tree. The same one where she'd once nursed Lucas's colicky cries back into silence, where she'd journaled the night she let go of Amanda's college fund to pay the mortgage. The tree hadn't changed much, but the people under it had. The house remained still behind her. No movement upstairs, no creaking floorboards, no champagne laughter. Good. Then footsteps. Soft, hesitant. Carol didn't turn right away. She didn't need to. Amanda's silhouette emerged slowly from the tree line, hoodie zipped to her chin, her arms wrapped tight across her ribs, like she was holding herself together with tension alone. "I thought you meant the porch," Carol said quietly, offering the milked coffee. Amanda took it with trembling hands. "I started there," she murmured. "Then I kept walking." Her voice was raw, like it hadn't spoken all night. They sat in silence for a moment, both sipping. The sunrise stretched faint gold fingers across the horizon. "I used to think image was identity," Amanda finally said. "That if people saw me in a certain light, it would make it true." Carol didn't speak. She just listened. But yesterday, watching them here, Amanda's voice, "I didn't even recognize the version of me they were talking to. And I hated how much I wanted them to like this place, when this place doesn't need anyone's approval." She set her mug down, eyes glossy. "I've spent years performing confidence," she said, voice trembling. "But last night I felt real, even in shame, even in guilt. And now, I don't want to just come home. I want to build here, for real this time." Carol's lips curved, but the smile was taut, measured. "Do you want to be part of the retreat team?" she asked. "Or just find a role that gives you comfort?" Amanda's gaze lifted, sharp and immediate. "I want to serve the mission, not myself." Carol nodded, slow and exact. "Then you're welcome, but I won't micromanage. And I won't protect you from the hard part." "I don't want protection," Amanda said. "I want permission to earn it." Carol looked at her daughter for a long moment, not as a mother sizing up a mistake, not as a woman nursing old wounds, but as a peer seasoned by grief, tested by identity, returned by "I can work with that," she said simply. Amanda exhaled. Something deepened from the center of her, like she'd been holding her breath for a decade. A few minutes passed in silence, broken only by the soft rustle of early breeze brushing through the grass. Lucas appeared then, walking slowly from the side path, coffee in hand, sweatshirt hood low over his head. He didn't interrupt, just took them in, Carol's hands folded in her lap, Amanda's hunched shoulders slowly relaxing, the empty cups beside them. "I don't want to ruin the moment," he said softly, stepping closer, "but I'm proud of both of you." Amanda wiped her cheek, almost bashfully. "You heard? I didn't need to. I felt it." Carol stood, and reached for Amanda's hand. Amanda didn't hesitate. She laced her arm through her mother's like she'd done as a little girl, walking across parking lots. Only now, she did it not for safety, but solidarity. The sun crested, washing the barn in gold. Carol turned to speak, but the sound of knuckles on wood broke the morning calm. They all looked toward the porch. A figure stood at the front door, dress shoes, gray suit, envelope in hand. The mayor. He held up a wooden plaque and an official-looking letter. "I hope I'm not too early," he said, smiling. Carol raised an eyebrow. Amanda tilted her head, already wary. "Why?" she asked flatly. The mayor lifted the envelope with both hands. "You've been selected," he said, "for a civic partnership. The greenhouse is going public. The city styled me as matriarch of the year." I looked at my daughter and saw pride, not regret. The banner stretched from post to post, its fabric rippling in the breeze like something sacred. Carol Green Retreat, in residency. In honor of restoration, not perfection. Rows of folding chairs faced the barn porch, where a small wooden stage had been set up beneath strung lights, and an arch made of wild flowers and sun-bleached pine. The crowd was a mix, locals in denim, trust board members in business casual, and former retreat guests, in flowing shawls and knowing smiles. Amanda stood beside Carol, hands clasped, nails bitten down from the night before. She wasn't hiding anymore. Her dress was simple, her posture was not. The mayor adjusted the mic. We don't get many moments like this, he began, the kind of smile in his voice that hinted at politics but didn't ruin the sentiment. Today we officially recognize the greenhouse as a civic partner in mental health, community healing, and intergenerational restoration. There was a warm swell of applause. He turned to Carol, offering a framed certificate and a cherrywood plaque, the engraved letters catching light. Carol Green, Matriarch of the Year. He read aloud. For giving more than shelter, for giving meaning. Carol blinked once, slow, measured. She didn't smile yet. Instead, she glanced sideways. Amanda was crying. Not a sob, not a break, just a steady fall of tears that Amanda made no attempt to hide. Her chin trembled, but her shoulders stayed square. She was there, not just watching. Carol stepped to the mic. She didn't hold her speech. She didn't need one. When I started this place, I didn't know what I was building, she said, her voice even but full. I only knew what I had lost. My father's hands, this land, my daughter's trust. I kept thinking if I worked hard enough, maybe I'd earn them all back. The crowd quieted further. Even the birds seemed to hold still. We didn't find our way here by being perfect, she said. We found it by surviving each other, and then choosing on purpose to stay. She paused, then nodded gently toward Amanda. Sometimes healing doesn't look like victory. It looks like showing up again and again, until something sacred grows where the silence used to be. The applause came then, not polite, but honest, a sound that meant we saw you. Lucas joined them on stage, and whispered something into Carol's ear. She raised an eyebrow. He leaned in closer. Women's Leadership Conference, downtown. 2 months. They want you. Carol shook her head slightly, smiling now. You booked me already, didn't you? Lucas only shrugged. As the stage cleared, Mia stepped up onto the front porch, reverently carrying the plaque. She didn't say anything, just held it against her chest like it weighed more than it looked, then hung it just inside the door, beneath the hand-painted words. Welcome to the greenhouse. Afterward, a flurry of camera clicks began. Photos with staff, volunteers, board members, guests who had returned just for this moment. Amanda stood beside Carol in every frame, one hand always on her mother's elbow, her smile no longer practiced. In the final shot, they gathered the whole community, women from the first retreats, men from the workshop crews, even the caterer with flour still dusted across his apron. A little girl from town held a cardboard sign, "This place feels like my mom." Later, long after the guests had trickled out, and the chairs had been folded and stacked, the three of them sat at the long table again, Carol, Amanda, and Lucas. No speeches, no toasts, just chilly and mismatched bowls, and the clink of shared quiet. Amanda stirred hers absently. The room hummed with something settled. Then she looked up. "Can I?" she started, then stopped. Lucas looked over. Carol waited, spoon resting mid-air. Amanda's eyes held hers. No performance, no irony. "Can I call you Mom now?" The spoon landed gently in Carol's bowl. She didn't answer. Not yet. From the porch came a knock. Not impatient, but firm. Carol stood, breath catching. Amanda didn't move. The door creaked open. A woman stood there. She looked familiar. Too familiar. Carol blinked, stunned. It was Amanda's ex-wife. She whispered, "I'd call you that already if I knew I deserved it." I handed her a binder. By morning the mayor had gone. The plaque was hung. The porch had been swept. And Amanda was sitting on the edge of the dining table, staring at a vase of wild flowers like it was holding some secret she hadn't yet unlocked. Carol entered without ceremony. She wore jeans, her sleeves rolled, a manila folder under one arm and a thick navy binder under the other. Amanda looked up, eyes guarded but hopeful. Carol didn't say anything at first. She just placed both items on the table with care, then slid the binder forward. Its cover read, Operations Manual, Greenhouse Retreat, and Residency, Property of Trust Leadership updated quarterly. Amanda blinked. "Is this, it's yours now?" Carol said. "You earned oversight here, not inheritance by default." Amanda reached for the binder slowly, like it might vanish if she moved too fast. "I thought I'd have to keep proving myself." Carol tilted her head. "You don't stop proving, Amanda. You just stop pretending it's not hard." There was silence. Then Amanda nodded, her throat working around something heavy. I whispered it. Last night, she said softly. After you left the table, I said, "Can I call you Mom?" But not out loud. Not really. Carol took the manila folder, opened it, and laid the contents across the table. Keys, a new staff badge, a printed calendar with Amanda's name listed as retreat coordinator for the upcoming season. "You can call me whatever you want," Carol said. "Just don't forget what we built this for." Amanda smiled, tears gathering again, but not falling. She looked older today and free. Lucas appeared in the doorway, hands tucked into his hoodie pocket. He didn't interrupt, just leaned there for a moment, watching the handoff like it was a birth. Carol caught his eye. The admiration there wasn't subtle, and it wasn't just for Amanda. "Breakfast in a bit," Carol said. Outside, the late morning sun had crested into something warm but bearable. Carol walked with Amanda across the gravel path to the main gathering hall, where Mia and Rita were arranging chairs in the round. "Morning," Mia called. "We figured you'd sleep in after all that mayoral nonsense." Carol smiled. "You know me better than that." Rita stood, brushing dust from her jeans. "What's the verdict, boss?" "No more bosses," Carol said. "Just builders." She turned to both women, her voice clear. "I want you on the leadership team. Officially. Long term." Mia's face broke into a grin before she could speak. "Thought you'd never ask." Rita didn't say anything at first. She just nodded once, then extended her hand toward Amanda. "We're gonna make a hell of a trio." Amanda shook it firm. No flinch. No apology. Back inside, the long dining table had been reset. Mismatched chairs, chipped mugs, a pitcher of lemonade already sweating in the center. Carol raised her glass. "To family," she said. Mia raised hers. "Built, not bought." Rita echoed. "Earned, not inherited." Amanda lifted her mug last, eyes meeting Carol's. "To starting again, as who we really are." The toast rang out softer than the others before, but deeper. It stayed. Later that day, the trust board gathered in the study for a private session. Carol took her seat at the head, Lucas to her left, Amanda to her right. Mia cleared her throat, holding a sleek white envelope. "We've been working on this for months." Quietly, she said. She passed it to Amanda. Carol leaned forward slightly, knowing what it was, but watching Amanda's reaction as if it were still uncertain. Amanda opened it carefully. "The Amanda Green Trust Scholarship for Young Leaders in Recovery, Education or Care Work, issued upon nomination by Amelia Green." Amanda's hand flew to her mouth. "It's conditional," she whispered. Lucas nodded. "Only if she believes the person deserves what you once had to rebuild." Amanda didn't cry. Not this time. She just said, "Then I better make sure I'm someone she'd nominate." That night, as the sun slipped behind the ridge, Carol stepped out to the dock. The lake shimmered bronze and quiet. Amelia was already there, barefoot, swinging her legs, tossing pebbles. She turned when she saw her grandmother, smile wide and sure. Carol waved, and for the first time in years, Amelia waved back.